Hello everyone. Welcome to BIOPLUS-INTERPHEX 2022. My name is Song Myung-soo. I will serve as a chair for this session. I'm from Penn-Betches, Korea. The theme of BIX 2022 is Summon BIX. So I hope you are weathering through the summer, and I would like to express my appreciation for all the participants to visit us and be with us. We will begin the session with the development of the bio industry. And now we are developing the cure for intractable diseases. And considering the innovativeness of the bio industry, environmental standards, and the recycling of the disposable materials, now ESG is introduced. So in this session, we would like to learn about the ESG, its significance and meaning to the industry. And we will have 20-minute presentation and 14-minute panel discussion. Then first, we would like to learn about the latest ESG trend and bioindustry impacts. And we would like to introduce Mr. Kim Dong-soo from Kim and Jang and ESG Research Institute. Hello everyone, my name is Kim Dong-soo. I'm the director of the ESG briefing in Kim and Jang. Today I would like to talk about the latest ESG trend in bioindustry. The ESG term was introduced by the UN. Now, ESG is commonly used in the global market. The ESG became popularized from 2006 to 2007 around the world, and the attention has been focused to ESG in 2019. CSV, CSR, sustainability, compared to these terms, now the attention is paid to ESG, so it became a buzzword. And ESG is now embedded across the industry. So the question is, when the term is used in 2005 and 6, however, now in 2018, attention to ESG is increasing rapidly. So why? First, regulatory change. According to the data of the Morgan Stanley from 2016 to 2019, regulatory change of ESG is about 580. So about 640 regulation is surrounding. Regulators also introduced regulations as well. So most of the regulations have been introduced in 2018 and 2019. Before 2018, generally ESG is a selective one, so it is an optional one. However, after 2018, it became a mandatory thing we need to do. So from 2018, regulation is rapidly increasing about ESG. And another one is when we look at the ESG, we need to pay attention to the financial market. In the future, ESG will be part of the regulation. And another part is the engagement of financial institutes. So there are 6 steps. Korea is on the stage between level 3 to level 4, and currently around the world it is on level 4 to level 5. So regarding the investment, we need to assess the risks, and we also need to identify the individual risk of ESG. So once companies identify the individual risk of companies, then financial institutes will regulate the interest rate. So once they assess the overall risk, then they will modulate the interest rate for individual risks. And Korea is on the level of level 2, so introduction of ESG risk framework. And in level 3, we will implement pilot projects. So in the future, financial institutes will move on that direction, and we can expect that. global financial institutes are also changing. So in 2017, AXA released its policy, and it is almost around declaration. But however, in 2016, UBS released its policy, and they specifically mentioned the asset classes. And in 2016, Agony, it is a asset management company, released its policy. And when we look at the policy, at the end of the policy, it listed up the companies they will invest. So they specified in what case they will withdraw the investment and in what case they will make the investment. So it is clearly categorized, and now you can see that a framework has been already developed so that we can assess the individual companies. Lastly, what we need to pay attention to is information disclosure. In the ESG market, at the end of 2019, in 23 exchanges have been institutionalized the ESG information disclosure, and 51 exchanges also provided the guideline about ESG information disclosure. From 2025, the listed companies will be required to provide the information disclosure about ESG in a phased manner. And now we are reviewing the ESG-related information disclosure. And potential IPO candidates also need to provide the ESG-related information. So bio startups and standalone companies need to provide the ESG information. In COSPI from 2026, the ESG-related information should be disclosed, and in COSDAC, now we are in the process of reviewing. So in the industry of biotechnology, ESG became an important standard. And we can also see the current issues and specific issues. Overall, regardless of the industry, there will be main topics related to ESG. The first topic is information disclosure, and the second one is carbon border adjustment tax. Regarding this tax, steelmaking and electronic power and fertilizer, aluminum, cement, organic chemical, plastic, biohydrogen, ammonia, those are applicable items for pilot projects. So from 2021 to 2022 March, the pilot project will be implemented. And if there are two materials, and if they have the same conditions, the first one is manufactured based on fossil fuel, and another one is manufactured by renewable energy. Then the cost for the product manufactured by the fossil fuel will be much lower. So there will be the problem of equity. So the question is why developing countries manufacture the product with the fossil fuel and export it to the advanced country. So advanced countries will implement the carbon border adjustment tax. That's for the equity. And there will be a pilot project, and from 2025, it will be fully introduced. And in the bio industry, there will be two important factors. The first one is there will be companies producing end product, and there will be companies manufacturing the medium product. So the final product manufacturers will be the directly applicable to this tax. And in the course of supply chain, they may be applicable to this tax. So you need to see whether you will be applicable to this tax system. And some companies create the inventory for carbon emissions. And as you can see in the healthcare industry, they are doing the science-related activities to measure the carbon emissions.
And now, ESG cases are observed in bio industry. And recently, the global issues are like that. And the global biopharmas and other companies have adopted ESG code. Pfizer and AstraZeneca are telling examples. And they put an emphasis on ESG code. And the ESG code can be reflected in their distribution and provision of service as well, but also in the supply chain activities or applicable areas of ESG code. So supply chain ESG code is like this. And the application of the ESG code for supply chain is very important and in limelight. And also there is industry-specific agendas. Electronics and Apple and other electronic companies, 147 electronic companies have participated in the initiative. This is called RBA. And in the automotive industry, driver sustainability standard is used. And in telecommunications, JESI and in chemistry together for sustainability, and textile, BCI is used. And in finance, UNEF FI is used as a standard. So in the biopharma industry, what kind of initiatives can be used? PSCI is being used. And as you can see from this slide, AstraZeneca, BASF, and Bayer, Bang, and Ingenheim, and Novo Nordisk, and Merck, and Johnson & Johnson, and global big pharmas and other bio companies have introduced and adopted PSCI, Industry Initiative, as an industry initiative. PSCI requires 5 criteria, and actually they have certain indicators, and if you have engaged or if those companies are your competitors and those industry-specific indicators are of importance. And if you're not an end product producer, but you are a supplier for the end product producer, then PSCI is of course important. However, my mother company, the company might adopt BCI rather than PSCI. So you have to carry out sensitive approach to this. And next, as I mentioned before, in the biopharma industry, the carbon neutrality is a buzzword as well. And carbon neutrality is a talk of the town in every industry. So the question is like this. In the biopharma industry, actually this industry is a semi-ESG industry. Actually, this is not entirely or completely ESG industry. However, its nature is falling under the category of ESG industry. So automotive industry is a case in point, a textbook example. And automotive industry actually is categorized as a conventional manufacturing industry. Actually, this is not the case. Most of companies by 2030 will prohibit the sales and production of internal combustion locomotives. And by 2035, EVs will be 100% produced. This is the main pillar of the business strategy. And we have a short time period. So within a short period of time, most of the automotive industry should turn themselves into a eco-friendly manufacturing mode. And this industry can be categorized as a semi-ESG industry. However, the nature of the industry contains the nature of ESG industry. For example, EV specialized producer Tesla. Actually, they put emphasis on the eco-friendliness. However, they create revenues by selling EVs in the process of EVs, but there might be wasted related issues or environmental social related issues. Actually, this is very dilemma, right? So this semi-ESG industry should be more sensitive to issues dealt on the agenda of ESG. This is prevailing opinion of experts. On this regard, ESG for biopharma industry has been challenged these days. Bio industry, like heavy or chemical industry, actually the biopharma industry is more free from ESG pressure. This is to be blamed. And building on ESG code, the management of biopharma industry, they have to consider the nature of semi-ESG industry. And also this is a issue-specific agenda, fair pricing. And the biopharma industry has been dealing with this issue, fair pricing, and last but not least, ESG disclosure regulations. And ESG disclosure USSC standard is used, and this is Securities and Exchange Commission, and there are regulations surrounding this. In the EU, EFRAG standard is released, and compared to the EU and the US standards, and on March and April, those two standards are released, and also IFRS, and Korea is adopt IFRS, and IISB is IFRS ESG disclosure. So there, and in April and March, there are ESG disclosure regulations released. And 2031 January, these standards will be in full implementation. And on the global market, next year January, ESG information disclosure is in implementation for Korea's big pharma companies and 10 pharma, and they will be subject to the application of US SEC standard, and global foreign companies will be subject to the application of ESG regulation. So the Korean suppliers might feel the indirect impact of the ESG information disclosure regulations. So not only standalone companies, but also a supplier, these ESG disclosure regulations are emerging as a global agenda. This is also confined to the biopharma industries, so they have to keep an eye on this. And as you can see from this paragraph, and actually the recent attention was paid to ESG information disclosure, and it is only to be exponentially increased. And sensitive and preemptive responses are determining the survival of one company, but also this contains the trade conditions, so multinational companies and suppliers for the global companies should keep their eyes on the ESG information disclosure. And this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Mr. Kim, thank you very much for your presentation. And before we move on, there are lots of good content. So if there is any question, we would like to accommodate one question, then we will move on. So is there any question? We'll hand over the microphone. Thank you very much for the presentation. And ESG became the hot topic nowadays. And many companies are doing the ESG information disclosure. But we are basically focusing on the E, which means the environment. So what is the ratio between ESG? When it comes to the bio industry, I believe the S and G, social and governance, will be also important. So I would like to ask about the global trend about this. Thank you very much for the question. I would like to answer in two ways. First, MIT had a research, and according to that, when we assess the ESG or when we develop the ESG standard, depending on the institutions, the correlation between indicators will be different. So regarding your question, I believe it is about the weight of ESG assessment, and the correlation is very low. So regarding the operator level of the correlations among the ESG, there are many controversies over this. Thank you very much for the good question. And second, then how we can give the weight for ESG. There are two major standards, Dow Jones and MSG standard. So regarding the ESG, S and G are 33%. But unlike the market, environment has a higher weight. So we can see that E is more important than S and G, but Morgan Stanley gives more weight to G. So when it comes to the bio industry, most of the social, environmental, and problems are related to governance, I believe. So in relation to governance, items are important.
Thank you for your answer, and this concludes the presentation, and we'll move on to the panel discussion. So actually, Dr. Kim and Professor Lee will be invited to a panel discussion, and we will take a deep dive into this topic. Thank you for your presence. And at the outset, I would like actually, Professor Lee, please introduce yourself and your topic. And I am Lee Ji-wan from KAIST, and KAIST is based, its head college campus is based in Daejeon. And actually, and Management College is located between Gyeonggi and Korea University. And Hojuni, the professor, is also serving as a professor for KAIST Business College. And actually, I am majoring in management and business. And actually, one of the roles that I am doing in university is social companies and MBA. And related to this course, actually SK Group is supporting this program and course. And SK Groups have been an ardent supporter. And KAIST SK Impact Business Center was established 10 years ago. And I am the director for the center. So ESG related research and the youth generation startups, thereby solving social issues, and how KAIST can contribute to the social issue resolution are areas of my focus. And actually, I am Kim Dong-soo, director from Kim and Chang, and ESG Management Research Institute was born 2 years ago. And we have ESG-related experts. We have 40 employees, and ESG policy advice and recommendations are given by us. And in the ESG sector, long-held issues are like that. And actually, I've been engaged in ESG-related issues for 18 years. But actually, ESG renamed itself. Actually, CSR was the or sustainable management are the successors of ESG. And ESG, the world or terminology, has gone through up and down, but actually it successfully garners great attention because despite these challenges. So actually there is a growing attention on the paradigm shift role of ESG, and I believe this is a very important topic. And as you mentioned before, Korea's level is on the phase 2 and transition to phase 3, which means establishment of framework and ESG regulations and standards are under development of MOTI, and also Financial Services Commission is trying to build ESG-related standards. So actually, they are rushed to build and establish identity of ESG and standards. And from 2018, there is a growing attention on the importance of ESG in the market, and the news line has gone along with that greenwashing, and also the dark sides and the bright sides of ESG. Of course, in the growth, ESG is important. However, we are now going through economic downturn, so why do we have to do ESG? And there has been a lot of questions. And recently, what is the agenda or take on the current ESG topic? And actually, Elon Musk is a major player here, and the evaluation on Tesla was not that good and not that robust than expected, and Elon Musk was very penalized. And so he said he do not believe the ESG evaluation, and Tesla will establish their own way of doing ESG. And ESG management and evaluation are areas of being challenged because many people believe this has something wrong. And Director Kim once said in 2015 and 2016, UN first used this terminology. So ESG garners incremental attention, but in 2019 and 2019, actually in the 2018 Business Roundtable, the US CEOs said that we are not aiming for we are going toward a stakeholder capitalism. And in the past, ESG was mainly led by the EU countries. As you're well aware of, the US-led economy rules are set. And in the US, there has been a growing attention on ESG, and which brings about great importance and impact. And this is fueled by the launch of the Biden administration, and ecological risk and climate change are abnormal, which brings greater attention on ESG as a buzzword. And actually, ESG has enjoyed a exponential increase in attention. Of course, there might be some cool down. And in this heated environment, attention for ESG, actually Korea is known for this fervor or heated discussion for ESG. So universities and media outlet are paying attention to ESG. So I believe there, of course, was a heated discussion or fervor for ESG, but this might be cooling down. Of course, there might be an possibility. However, ESG-related issues have something to do with building a better future. And this is everyone's business, not your business. And actually, many companies think this as a pressure. And for companies' perspective, the social and planetary or global issues should be met, while there might be a mercy for companies to set a. This is not the case actually. Companies should stick to their economic performance. At the same time, they have to stick to the ESG code. So the companies might think this is very contradictory. And this gave a birth to greenwashing terminology. And in this phase, we have gone through some cooling down of ESG, and in the news media outlet, there has been a lot of headline with regards to this. But this sentiment might be attributable to cooling down on the ESG agenda, which was enjoying a fervor in the past. And we misunderstand the phase of ESG. So some people might think this is a fashion or a fad. And there might be a hoax to mislead people to think this might be a fashion. And could you please give your take on? And I'm on the same chapter with Professor Lee, and we have to have long-term strategy to strike a great balance between the two. And Ukraine's crisis happened. European leaders are talking about the response to Ukraine crisis, and also they talked about carbon adjustment tax. So over the long haul, ESG might enjoy a continuous discussion. So distribution and processing or manufacturing in BAU is not sustainable. So sustainable manufacturing and creation of revenues are subject of global consensus, and the direction of ESG is reaching consensus. Actually, rather than using ESG, we might use other word, but the direction will be same. And many people say that ESG era is collapsing, and we might need a new approach. And there are three facts supporting this. And the amount of bond issued to ESG is decreasing, but the amount is also on decrease, of course. However, prolonged pandemic and accelerated stagnation, the entire amount of bond issued is decreasing. However, relatively small decrease in ESG-related bond issuance. So we have to be cool-headed and take a good decision. And second, and this BlackRock and global institutional investor changed their position. Climate change related annual stakeholder conference might be an opportunity. Actually, this previously mentioned elaborately Ukraine's crisis and pandemic-related issue and prolonged pandemic give birth to high inflation and BlackRock said that this might lead to a overreaction of government to climate change. But actually it should be flexible in accordance with the changes on the market condition. And last but not least, ESG market is collapsing, and news media outlet or companies changes are pointed out. And under this pandemic and Ukrainian crisis, there might be a entrenchment of economic downturn. But this is a test bed for us to examine the genuine role of companies on ESG. So actually this can be described as bubble burst and cooling down of ESG. However, over the long to mid-term owl, actually there may be acceleration on discussion on ESG.
Thank you very much for the answer. I believe most of the participants in this session are from the bio industry and pharmaceutical companies, so they might have interest in this. So I believe overall goal of the industry is about health. And regardless of the income level, we need to prioritize the health level. And in order to do that, now you are working in the bio industry. So regarding the health entity, and when we look at the COVID-19 vaccine, there is a government support and supply and a fair price issue. So can you make an observation on this? So regarding the health equity issue, I believe there are two issues. Universal health care should be provided, and the key word is accessibility and affordability. During the COVID-19 pandemic, vaccine was provided to some countries first, but other countries received the vaccine later. So this is an accessibility issue. And the second issue is about affordability or fair price issue. So in relation to this, health equity is controversial, and accessibility and affordability will be the two key words. And when we talk about the health equity, we need to separate the things, whether it is a common, ordinary situation or in an urgent situation. Pharmaceutical companies make a lot of efforts to do the R&D, and they develop the drugs and they sell the products. So regarding this, when it comes to the pricing, there are many controversies and different perspectives. So it is very difficult to make a conclusion. But when it comes to the health equity and affordable price and accessibility, we are talking about the equal and fair price in a special circumstances. So we need to take a flexible perspective. And regarding this controversy, most of the pharmaceutical companies, I believe, agree on this. But the problem is, in a non-special circumstances, in an ordinary situation, when it comes to the fair price issue, it is difficult to make this conclusion. So pharmaceutical companies agree with the price issue in a special circumstances, but it is also extended to the ordinary situation, so we need to take caution. And one of the questions I would like to ask is related to the question we had previous, related to the ESG. So accessibility to medical information and health information, whether it is a proven drug or not, it is a very important question. And when I received the vaccine, I was very curious whether this vaccine is reliable and whether it is fit for me. So this is a very important issue for the consumers, and I believe it is a keyword for the bio industry ESG. So when it comes to the reliability of the clinical studies, what are the main topics and what are the things we need to consider? Thank you very much for the question. Recently, when it comes to the plastic bottle, many companies removed the labels on top of the plastic bottle. So when they supply this unlabeled plastic bottle, they positioned as a environmentally friendly company. And they also removed the plastic materials. However, at the same time, so I'm talking about the label on top of this bottle. So the label have been removed and they are engraving the information on top of the bottle. So there should be the required information. Where should it be located? This is a controversial issue. So supply of information, and there is a tension between information receiver and information provider. And we need to adjust this with the platform. There are many platforms already created. And in Korea, I believe we need to also have this kind of platform. And in the pandemic situation, when it comes to the information, in the bio industry, there is a consensus. What kind of information should be provided to the supplier and consumer? It was already reached a consensus. However, in the pandemic situation, in the short term, we need to provide the information to the end user. So we need to talk how much responsibility should be given to the pharmaceutical companies so that they provide the information. So I believe this pandemic situation will give a lesson. Thank you very much.
And I would like to throw a question to Professor Lee. And as previous speaker mentioned, end product supplier, provider, or intermediate good provider. Actually, this is all about supply chain issue. And the product provider, for them, actually ESG-related supply chain is of great importance. And in Korea, what is your take on this? And SK are a leading company in this sector, so could you please elaborate on the cases? Korea's leading company SK, you mentioned that. And actually, I am not in a good position to point out certain company, but actually they paid a lot of attention on supply chain related issues. However, more SMEs in the supply chain have faced with some issues. So ESG issues are interwoven. So when we do appropriate clinical trial, personal privacy issue comes up. So there might be one good conduct and the other might be a misconduct. So this led to the greenwashing, emergence of greenwashing. So if we are supplier to the global pharma company, EU suggested standards should be met. So of course we have to meet that standards. However, when Korean companies are buyers and we are a client, actually yes, how those companies respond to supply chain in terms of ESG. On this note, we are in an infancy stage. And multi-stakeholders in the supply, along with the supply chain, or we use subcontractor, but we say partner rather than saying subcontractor. So when we look at SMEs and the SME association, and when we have talked with them on ESG, actually they are consider ESG as a regulation. Of course, they are not agreeing the direction. I'm not talking about they are not agreeing on the direction of ESG, but they are stretched to the thin to do ESG. And this is all about their own survival. So ESG performance or ESG compliance is directly linked to the SME survival. So buyers have to utilize or adopt ESG policies to ensure the survival of SMEs. Actually, one convenience store franchise, it says marketing costs are deferred to the supplier by means of private labeling. And this is a common story unfolding in the industry. And the supply chain has been mainly affected by the Korean big companies, and they have to evaluate their performance, and also based on this they have to make a change in evaluating performance and incentivizing those who are good at ESG. And this is the starting point of change. And biopharma, and there are multi-stakeholders in the biopharma value chain. And so the value chain, one loophole in the value chain leads to the entire collapse of value chain. So this is something that we have to keep in mind. So major big companies which have greater impact on value chain and the regulatory agencies should draw a big picture to approach ESG. And also, ESG is not a good thing to do, but we have to have a different approach compared to the past, and they have to be on consensus on the new establishment of new policy related to ESG. With regards to the thing that you mentioned this, I visited local government, and bio waste is an area they are making effort to. And actually, supply chain has a similar issue with bio waste discard. EU and US suggested standards are something that we are eager to follow, but actually we might be put aside as a beneficiary, and there is a higher standard for airbags, but in Pakistan there is no standard for airbag. So actually, cars with poor airbags can be easily advancing into the Pakistan market. So do you have any cases that you can share with us, or market condition? And I like life science rather than bio industry. Actually, life science is addressing life. So when we eat something, this tastes actually you can cure rapidly with a intake of treatment. The effect might transpire soon or later. This is a nature or attribute. This is the nature of the life science, and this is also related to the supply chain. So we need to take a holistic approach. And also we have to think about plans to realize those approach. So rather than taking an approach to address issues, actually life science is treating life, and those companies are treating life, and you are the expert, customers, and there is a asymmetric information between suppliers and customers. So for the supplier's perspective, the best or optimized technology is well known, but Director Kim said there is affordability issue. So in some country or in some context, this listed price of drug might not be affordable or might be affordable. So they should enjoy affordability of products and services. So there are Evian, which is a premium water, but at the same time, you can drink a water which has no harm or which is not detrimental to your health at an affordable cost. So actually, this is on your call to decide the balance between the listed price and supplied price. And at the same time, we can narrow the gap between imbalances. So if income of underdeveloped countries increase, then we can provide value-added products at a higher cost. So we need to take an incremental approach. So unlike the other industries, biopharma industry has a lot to play. And actually, we are joined by many prominent experts and consumer association. But asymmetric information with regards to this, we have to take a joint effort to address these issues. And also, we need to share a sense of community to monitor with each other. And also, we have to strike a check and balance. And this is my take on.
I would like to add one more comment. The bio industry, we have many participants here, and as I mentioned before, in relation to ESG, we need to change our mindset. As I mentioned before, we are in the ESG business, and if we provide the ESG product, even though our performance on ESG is low, then there is no meaning of existence. So Tesla is now making EVs, but still the company is showing low performance of ESG. So it is like a denial of itself. So Elon Musk showed very extreme response because the situation is denying himself. So we are not saying that we are excluding the ESG. Rather, Elon Musk said that he will create his own standard for ESG. He is not denying ESG. Rather, I believe he strongly agrees with ESG. So the life science industry and bio industry is based on the ESG values. We need to understand this, and we definitely need to have the ESG values in the business. So if we are not environmentally friendly, if we are not cherishing the social value, and if we are not cherishing the governance, then we cannot create the profit by selling ESG-related products. So this kind of business practice will not work in the future. If I add, the questioner said that whether because of E is in the first letter of ESG, or whether we are focusing on environment, we are paying attention to E more. So it is creating confusion. But when it comes to the social factors, nowadays agendas are on the table. Should we cherish the value of social values? I believe by nature, bio industry need to cherish the social factors because it is related to health, it is related to waste, it is related to ethics, and it is also related to the human resources. So compared to other industries, we also need to give more thoughts on social factors in the bio industry. So I'm not saying that we need to be negligent about E or G, because these values are equally important in other sectors, but in the pharmaceutical and bio industry, I believe, considering the current situation, we need to pay more attention to social factors. And considering this, I believe the bio industry need to play as a role model. And I believe bio industry has the leadership. Nowadays, environmentally friendly industries such as battery companies are receiving a lot of attention. But if bio industry can show the leadership, then it will give a lesson to other industries. Thank you very much for a good comment. We would like to expand the topics. So there are many subsectors in the bio industry, such as diagnosis. However, it is also related to other industries, such as food and beverage or chemical industries. So what are the major issues ESG-related issues in the related industries. Previously, I also mentioned that bio industry is a semi-ESG industry. And traditionally, ESG, bio industry is an intermediary industry. The hot topic for companies is waste disposal. And when it comes to the waste disposal, it can be boiled down into two topics. First, we need to reduce the volume of waste first, and eventually we need to replace the materials with biodegradable materials. And it can be handled by bio industry. In the food and beverage industry and other industries, they are looking for a solution from the bio industry. So the characteristics of the bio industry is very closely related to the acceleration of the ESG. So as an intermediary institution, it can play a big role. The advancement of the ESG in the bio industry is hugely influential, and it will serve as an enabler for other industries' ESG practices. In this sense, not just about the food and beverage, but also in many other industries, bio industry can play a role, and such as a fishery and maritime industry. There are plastic waste issue in the ocean. And nowadays, when we catch the fish, the net is used, and those nets are biodegradable nets. So after about 15 days in the ocean, they will be degraded. So the ESG development in the bio industry is closely related to the ESG practice across the industries. So I believe the role in this session is very important, and it can create the momentum.
So in a nutshell, I am engaged in social startups or social companies, and for vegetarian and vegans, we have carried out business for them, targeting vegetarians and vegans. So we try to meet their needs and desire in the past. So through the process, and many people actually are turning into vegetarians and vegans, concerning about the emissions from related or related industry. So now they become vegans and vegetarians. In Korea, actually, this is not the case, but there is a growing youth generation to turn to vegetarians and vegans. So an alternative proteins or meats are under development, or alternative meats are under development. And this becomes a widespread business model which attracts a huge amount of investment. And this is far from vegetarian or veggies. And so ESG is also related to business opportunities. And there can be a new growth engine. And on the same chapter, actually, I add biohealthcare industry itself should change their perceptions of themselves. And we're living in the 21st century. Intermediary industry for its industry. Actually, this is a foundation industry for entire industry. In the past, automotive industry, steelmaking industry were considered as a foundation industry, and now biohealthcare industry serve as a foundation industry to serve as an enabler for other industries. Despite this fact, they are thinking themselves as a company to provide a unique service. However, this is not the case. Actually, biohealth industry can serve as a catalyst for other companies or industries to grow exponentially. In particular, in a time ESG have been in limelight. So biohealthcare industry and those engaged in the industry should consider themselves as a enabler, and we should be bold in thinking about ESG. And actually, for a short period of time, 40 minutes, we have talked about global intermediary industry and biopharma industry major issues. And as you mentioned before, Professor, you mentioned before, when we think about alternative meat, ESG is starting its initiative centering around investment market. However, customers should evaluate the companies. So the ball is on in the consumer's court. So actually, there should be a system which allows consumers to evaluate the performance of companies. So what is your take on this issue from the perspective of consumers in evaluating the ESG performance of a company? Actually, this is a trend led by capital market and also led by institutional investors or pension service provider. So this was an alarming call, but on the consumer's perspective or side, we should establish a desirable culture to empower consumers. Then this trend can be sustainable, and the pension service should earn profits out of their UAM. If there is a news headline that says UAM of pension service is lower, then many people raise a question. But human right and life and education of consumers are related to this issue as well. So this is an area of empowering consumers to engage in more. As you all aware of, institutional investments are large company-led community. Consumers association are, let's say, fragmented. So there might be a rally point for this. And also there is a news article specialized in consumers, and also there is some influencer which forms a certain perception on the side of consumers. So the power of consumers are of importance, and especially in the time of cooling further on ESG. And building on this attention, companies should reflect this in their ESG activities. And actually also this can be used for companies to cool down ESG-related activities. And this is my take on.
Basically, consumers can influence to the end product. We regarded that it is limited. So just like the bottled water, consumers will purchase the products, and we thought that their influence, the consumer's influence, is limited to the final product. However, it was not the case. In the bio industry, they are engaged in the supply chain, and they are engaged in the B2B business, so they thought that it is not related to the consumer. However, nowadays, the influence of the consumer is not limited to the end product, rather it is extended to the companies. For example, SK Hynix is a chip maker. We do not purchase the semiconductor ourselves. However, the image of the company or ESG activities are part of the consumer evaluation, so they are raising their voices. And in the biohealthcare industry, the companies believe that since they are not manufacturing the end product and they are not participating in the manufacturing process, they think that they are just staying in the supply chain and the impact of the consumer is limited. However, it is not the case. So nowadays, the influence of the consumer is growing ever and ever. So the bio industry needs to pay attention to this increasing influence of the consumer. I think it is time to wrap up. So we would like to conclude the session. We had a presentation from Mr. Kim, and panelists also talked about the health equity, COVID-19 vaccine issue, supply chain issue, and product issue in the global market. But once again, I would like to say say that all the participants are in the bio industry, so you need to be more ESG embedded business. You think that you are the leaders in the ESG practice in the industry, and then bio industry will become the foundational industry, just like the steel industry in the past. And I wish that bio industry has a higher reputation in the future and play more role. With this, I would like to conclude the presentation and panel discussion. Thank you very much for your participation.